Hey everyone, welcome back to Glue La La. If you are new here, my name is Jess, and on my channel I like to create home decor on a budget using items found at the Dollar Tree. If that sounds fun to you, I'd love it if you would hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. And make sure to say hi in the comments. If you are already subscribed, welcome back and let me know how your week is going so far. I always love chatting with you in the comments. Today I've created 3 pieces of modern farmhouse home decor. I'm still getting familiar with my Cricut, so I used that in all 3 projects, and of course I used quite a few things from the Dollar Tree. Alright everyone, let's get started. The first project was inspired by this piece that I saw on the Hobby Lobby website. Now, I had to buy 2 canvases from Michael's because I knew I needed bigger ones than what the Dollar Tree carries. So I got 2 12 by 12 canvases. And then I'm also using 2 of the 6 by 8 canvases that you can find at the Dollar Tree. And I started by just cutting off the canvas from each of the 4 frames. And I didn't bother taking the staples out of the back, but I did make sure to take the canvas off of the back of each frame. Once I had all the canvas material removed from the frame, I took the antique wax by Waverly and I gave each frame just one quick coat, and as I was applying it with a brush, I wiped it off with a baby wipe because I wanted the stain color to be just a bit lighter than how it normally comes out. I'm also going to be using the same stain color on these jumbo craft sticks that I found at Walmart. I showed you there. They're just a little bit bigger than the regular tongue depressor size that you can find at the Dollar Tree. But I did the same technique where I just brushed the stain on all 4 of the craft sticks and then I used a baby wipe to wipe off the excess. Once the stain had dried on all 4 of the frames and the 4 craft sticks, I took the 2 larger frames and I'm using this wood glue that I found at the Dollar Tree, and it's actually made by the Super Glue brand. And I just ran a bead of it in between the 2 larger frames. And then to give it a little bit more security, I'm going to use these giant craft sticks that I also found at Walmart. And I'm just going to hot glue one to the back of the 2 frames where they meet. And then I'm going to use some pieces from some smaller craft sticks just to fill in the gaps, just to help make this piece a little bit more secure. Once the glue had a little bit of time to set on the 2 bigger frames, I knew that I needed the smaller frame to kind of be centered in between each of the 2 bigger frames. And I did stack up a few craft sticks just to help level out the smaller frame to the larger frame. And I bought these new miter shears on Amazon. I've seen a lot of other DIYers use them, so I'm still trying to get used to them, because if you guys have watched my other videos, you know usually I like to cut my craft sticks with my paper trimmer, but I wanted to give these a try instead. So to center the smaller frame inside of the larger frame, what I did was I measured each side of the frame and I just drew a dot where the center point was on both frames. And then I just lined the dots up just to help kind of make sure that everything was spaced out evenly. And then I took those craft sticks that I had stained with the Waverly wax and I cut a piece down, and I just used a little bit of hot glue to attach the smaller frame to the larger frame using the stained craft stick. And I did that on all 4 sides, and you can see here, this is why I had to add those 3 craft sticks underneath the smaller frame, because the wood on the smaller frame was not quite as big as the larger frame, so I wanted to make sure that the back side of both frames would be flush with each other. And then I just repeated this same process on the other side with the other frame. And then if you have a staple gun, you could also add just a little staple here between the craft stick and the smaller frame and the craft stick and the larger frame, just for a little added extra security. I just didn't have a staple gun in my craft room on this day. So for the background pieces of the smaller frame, I decided to take one of these chopping mats that I found at the Dollar Tree. And one side of this chopping mat is shiny and the other side is kind of matte. And they're pretty transparent, so you can see through them. And I thought that that would be a really cool look to add to the inside of the smaller frame. So I just cut 2 pieces down to fit inside. And then on my Cricut, I used some matte black vinyl to print out monogram letters for my name and my husband's name. And that's what I'm going to put on the inside of the smaller frames. So I took out my grid mat here and I just added a piece of painter's tape on one of the pieces of the chopping mat that I had cut, just to help me measure this out a little bit more so that I could get those monograms centered in the chopping mat. And I did put the monogram on the matte side because I didn't want a lot of reflection coming off of the chopping mat. And then once I had the monograms placed onto each piece of the chopping mat, then I just went through and lined it up on the back side of the frames, and I used a little piece of painter's tape just to help hold it in place until I could get a couple dots of hot glue down. And I went through where the craft sticks were and I added glue there first, and then after I had everything glued in place, I did take a small piece of Scotch tape, like the transparent tape, and I taped that over it just to help make it a little bit more secure. I love how this piece turned out, and the monograms that I used, I just found within the Cricut design space. They weren't something that I had to design myself. And I think you could also make this piece work with the 8x10 frames that you can find at the Dollar Tree, but my store hasn't carried those frames in a while. It seems like they're always out every time I go. So for the second project, I'm going to be creating a sign using these wood planks that you can find in the Crafter Square section of the Dollar Tree. And I'm also using one of these metal windmills that you can find in the gardening section. I had a little bit of trouble getting the windmill to come off of this. I just had to keep kind of cutting at it with my wire cutters, but I eventually got it. And then I just gave it one coat of the ink color by Waverly, just because I wanted it to have a little bit more of a matte black look instead of it being so shiny and metallic. But I do think it looks neat how it is, how it already has a little bit of distressing on it. So you could just leave it the way it is. And then once I had that painted, I took the 6 planks from that pack of wood planks and I'm giving them each a quick coat of the plaster color by Waverly. I wasn't too concerned if I missed a couple spots here and there because I do kind of like that distressed look. And once they had all dried, I wanted to assemble them. So what I did was I laid out 2 planks and I cut down a piece of a craft stick. And instead of trying to glue the 2 planks to each other, I just used a little bit of hot glue on the craft stick and laid it over the seam on the back side of the 2 planks. And I did that with all 6 planks. I put a craft stick in between each set of 2. And then to form the sign, I'm going to use my ruler, and I kind of went out of screen here, but I just used my ruler to create an equal space between each set. So I think my ruler is about 1.5 inches wide. So I lined it up with the first plank, and then it bumped the middle plank up about 1.5 inches. And then I did the same technique where I just put hot glue on a craft stick, and that's how I attached the 2 planks together. And then I did the same thing with the third plank. Now you can see what I'm doing here. So I lined my ruler up with the bottom edge of that plank and then added the third set of planks and added more craft sticks where the seams are. And then this way it kind of gave it sort of a shiplap look, sort of a tile look, but I really thought it made for a pretty unique sign. You can see here that because the planks aren't perfectly even, it does leave a little bit of gap in between each one, but I actually kind of like how that looks. So then I decided to do just a little bit of dry brushing over the whole piece. So I'm using the Mineral Color by Waverly, and I didn't dry brush as much on as I normally do. I did kind of a little bit of a lighter touch. Now, to be able to attach the windmill to the sign, I cut some little pieces from one of the smaller wooden dowels that I found at the Dollar Tree, just so it would fit inside that ring that's around the windmill, because the center of the windmill has a little bit of a post that sticks out, and so I wanted a little bit more surface area to be able to glue onto the sign. So that's why I glued the dowel rods onto the blade part of the windmill. So then to attach it to the sign, I just added hot glue on each of the dowels, and then I glued it onto the side of the sign. To create a quote for on the sign, I cut out words using my Cricut, and I just looked up a typewriter font because I really like how that looks. And you'll see here that I am missing the dot above the I in the word wind, and I didn't realize that till later, so I had to go back through and I just made a little dot with a paint pen. And the quote I'm using is actually a song lyric. It's "Any Way the Wind Blows." So let me know in the comments if you now have Bohemian Rhapsody going through your head, because I end up singing it every time I look at this sign now. I knew that I wanted to hang this sign, so I'm using a length of the nautical rope from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just using hot glue to glue it onto the back of the sign. And after I had hot glued the ends of the rope down, I just held it in place with a little bit of painter's tape. And then I flipped the sign over to the front, and using the same rope, I just tied a knot in the rope, and I cut the end off really close to the knot so that I could hot glue it and attach it to the front of the sign. That way it looks like the rope comes through the front of the sign. I really like how this one turned out. I think I might put this in our camper because we don't have many decorations in there. And just to let you know, I am on Instagram, so if you want to see some kind of behind the scenes things that I like to do, go follow me over there at Glue La La. For the second project, I found this sign on the Hobby Lobby website too, and I knew I wanted to recreate it, but a little bit more simple. So I'm using one of these wood houses from the Dollar Tree. And I like how the outside of the house is. It kind of has a little bit of a whitewashed wood grain look, so I'm just giving the inside of the house a quick coat of the Plaster Color by Waverly, and I am going to be adding something to the inside of the house, so I knew I didn't need to cover up that design completely. I just wanted to make sure that if a little bit of it peeked out, you wouldn't be able to see it. And then I did add a little bit of Plaster Color just to the very front of the house as well. Next, I'm taking some of these square wood planks from the Crafter's Square at Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be using 3 of them, and I'm going to paint them each in a different color. So the first one I painted with the Plaster Color, and then the second one I didn't even bother cleaning off my brush, but I'm using the Truffle Color, and I painted that one. And then again, I didn't clean off my brush, and I'm going to use the Mineral Color. That way they have a little bit of variegation in the color, but I didn't have to go back through and distress them with any other colors. So once I had those painted, I took a piece of this cork sheet from the Dollar Tree, and I traced around the outside of the house, and I cut it out to start, and the little frame edge of the house is about 1/4 of an inch wide. So once I had the house shape cut out of the cork, then I just went back through and took an extra 1/4 inch off the whole way around, and that helped it fit inside the house pretty perfectly. I think I did end up having to cut just another hair off the bottom, but it went in pretty easily. And because these sheets are adhesive, all I had to do then was peel the backing off, and I was able to just stick it right inside the house. After I decided what order I wanted the colors to go in, I just flipped the planks over. And to adhere them to each other, I'm doing the same thing where I'm just using craft sticks and hot gluing the craft stick onto the seam in between the planks. That way I'm not getting any glue oozing out through the front. And then because I didn't want these planks, because they are thinner, I didn't want them to be the whole way towards the back of the house, if that makes any sense. So I am just using these tumbling tower blocks just to act as a little bit of a spacer, so that when I flip it over and I attach the planks to the house, they kind of sit in the middle of the side of the house rather than on the back of the house. And then to attach the planks to the house, I did have to add a little bit of hot glue to the side of the plank, and then I ran a bead along the back and I held it there until it cooled down just to make sure it was secure. Then I used my Cricut and I picked out 3 different fonts that I like, and I cut out the letters H, M, and E on some heavyweight cardstock. And I'm gonna glue those into the house and then 2 of the planks. And then instead of cutting an O out of cardstock, I decided to create a mini wreath to put on as the O. So I found a circle that I thought would be the right size for in the plank, and I used that as my guide, and I'm using some of this wired jute that you can find at the Dollar Tree. And I wrapped it around twice just so it was about the same size as that spool of ribbon. And that's going to be the base for my wreath. So once I had the jute twisted around on itself, I took some pieces of greenery that I had in my stash and I just started hot gluing them around the outside of the jute. And the reason that I use the jute is because if there were any parts that were peeking out that weren't covered up by the greenery, it wouldn't matter because the jute looks nice on its own too. I've had a few people ask me in the comments about some of the different tools that I used. So I have created an Amazon list, and I have everything linked in my description box. So anything that I don't get at the Dollar Tree, like the scissors that I use and my glue gun and this little silicone mat, I have all of those linked in the description box. And I don't know exactly how this works with Amazon, but I do know that if you click on those links and buy something, I do earn a small commission. So I just wanted to let you know about that. So once I had the wreath all decorated up how I liked it, I just used a little bit of hot glue and I glued it onto the plank. And here's a look how this sign is. I really like how this turned out. I like the different fonts. I kind of wish that maybe I would have made the M and the E just a little bit more different, but I still like how it turned out. And here's a final look at all 3 of the projects that I created today. I don't know if I can pick a favorite. I think maybe this first project is my favorite with the frames. I really like that transparent look that the chopping mat gave that inner frame. And I really like these monogram symbols that I found on the Cricut Design Space. You'll have to let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you like these projects, make sure you hit that thumbs up button because it really does help my channel grow. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss my future videos. I post a new DIY every Wednesday. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye!